Hope you're all doing well. Back on the bike a bit now, which is good. The Yamaha Y-00Z. So far this is a concept bike from Yamaha. They've shown some pictures on their website, dug deep into these photos, and I've been sort of talking to my contacts to figure out what are Yamaha doing in the world of e-bikes. The first thing to try and figure out with Yamaha is what's happened, because they withdrew from America. Well, they withdrew their e-bike section from America. Now, why am I doing a video about Yamaha when there's no new product? Well, it's not really true there's no new product. There is a product that's ready to go, that's ready to be launched. And it's this Y-00Z. So when you take a close look at this bike, and I've got the images in front of me now, you can start to understand all about where Yamaha are coming from and where they're going. Because it's obviously a concept bike, so we don't know what they might produce in the real world, but we can see quite a few features that they're trying to use to distinguish themselves. As always, the video is supported by Liat.
So also using this, which is from their Hydro-Dry line. It's got a wind protector in the front. Anyway, back to the video.
The thing about Yamaha, and I've noticed this on every video I've ever done about Yamaha, on every channel I've ever done it, is the level of interest. It's super high. People love to talk about Yamaha, they love to see the motors. They really believe in the brand and in the products that they do. And also they do good motors. That's something that's been very clear. And obviously other brands apart from Yamaha use these motors. But having their own bike also is taking them to another level. So their Y-00Z was the model which obviously hit the market a couple of years ago. A little bit late in the sense of the design philosophy was behind the curve. They didn't have a mullet set up. They had a system which works, but honestly could be more up to date. And the reviewers out there have found that, including me. Yes, some people have modified it a bit and put on a 29er on the front, and that's changed the bike a lot. And it is a maneuverable bike. And one thing I did find riding the system is that with that 500 watt-hour battery, which was a little small compared to the rest of the market, it did have a very efficient usage. Feeling is one thing, measuring it is another, and I haven't measured that. Their new bike, which they are or have in the concept phase, they've stayed with the whole aluminium frame thing, which is good, which means that the pricing of this bike will be in the middle to the accessible end of the market rather than just the high end. When you look at the design, they have stayed with the twin tube design, with the battery sitting inside the front down tube between the sides of the frame. So they haven't moved much on from that design, which seems to be a success. But there's some other features on this concept bike that I think really bear looking at and could make a big difference. If you take a look at the motor, it's been rotated by around 90 degrees to be more vertical. And the actual driving force is off a small pulley wheel. Now, will they do this in real life? I don't know. There are some advantages to that design. And one of them being you can reduce chain growth, because if you look where the motor pivot is and where the suspension pivot is, they're basically over one another. So you should end up with a more active suspension design with that position, because essentially you've created a high pivot bike with the right chain path for that bike. So that's definitely an interesting point that I would love to try and see if it actually works in reality. When you try the Trek/Plus, it has that high pivot bike feeling, and I suspect this should also have that feeling. So close look at the motor there, you can see it has a single pinion on the chain which pulls the chain through and means that the bottom bracket is much smaller and more normal, let's say. So also makes for the motor to be simpler to deal with in some ways, because you've got that motor, if you want to remove it, you don't have to remove the bottom bracket, you don't have to remove all that. So it's kind of separated that out a bit, which is an interesting design point. It looks like as well, the way the motor is connected to the system is simpler as well. It does look particularly easy to remove, I have to say, and it also allows that rear chainstay to stay, let's say, shorter. Again, increases the maneuverability and the possibilities you can do with this bike, especially if you have a 27.5 inch rear wheel. So if I'm trying to get close, is this a 27.5 inch? You can't really see, but I would assume it is. But this bike actually looks like it's got the same wheel size, front and rear. So it looks like a 29er front and rear. So maybe they've opted for a 29er front and a 29er rear. The frame design doesn't look much different to the current Y-00Z, but they have created and put onto this bike an electrically assisted steering. Now that's kind of a bit strange. I've never tried one of those. I don't know how it works. Now I'm sure Yamaha would not put it on there if it didn't work. The usefulness for the average person, they do say it stops too much kickback on the bar from their marketing video. So I would assume that meant more directional stability on steep rocky descents where there's the risk of losing control more. But I don't know how that feels. They do say though, with the KS system from Canyon, that it is actually quite useful. So I've never tried it, so I wouldn't know. I'm sure it's similar to having a stabilizer on a motorbike, and that is definitely an interesting possibility. So let's take a look at the suspension. The key thing about the suspension is they've gone for a KYB on this concept bike. So we've got a coilover shock on the rear and we've got an upside down fork on the front. Now upside down forks on the front is a very, very, very deep dark hole to get down, mainly because the front axle is not big enough to maintain the torsional stability between those lower legs. So unless you have quite a large front axle like you would on a motorbike, which can quite easily use this system, which would increase weight, and you might actually defeat the point of having an upside down fork. It's true, an upside down fork does have the ability to have the oil on the stanchions all the time, so possibly better lubrication. There's a lower mass, so theoretically moves more easily, but the wheel stability often is not as stable as it should be compared to a normal bike. There are people out there who say that that improves the ride. So I don't know, without trying it, it's hard to say. And the fact that a lot of bikes are sold on looks nowadays, not just pure performance. For an aluminium bike looking like that, it looks pretty interesting. I'd love to get on the saddle and ride this thing and really push it to the limit. So let's talk about Yamaha in the market, because this is a really important thing, and a lot of this comes from my research and talking to various people. I have to say Yamaha really, in my opinion, removing themselves from the USA market made a mistake. I don't think they should have done that. They should have stayed present, reduced the numbers, stayed low level, and maybe they'll come back. But at the end of the day, or they'll move away from dealers to, from Yamaha dealers, they'll move more to a model where shops rather than dealers. Because I think one of the things that came out from their exercise of selling only through dealers is, unless the dealer was an avid mountain biker, they kind of considered it probably more of an irritation rather than something they wanted to do. They were more interested in selling other Yamaha products, mainly motorbikes. Europe, apparently everything's on pause, and they're doing nothing until, say, the end of 2025, when they might make a decision about what to do. Do they launch a bike? Do they not? The communications are very, very sparse from Yamaha, and I would implore Yamaha to not lose the power of their big company branding, their quality products, because the product was a high quality product, there's no doubt. The motors are good. Maintain and keep consistent to the market. It's very important. Yeah, run low numbers, keep it as a low profile project, but stay on the market, because that's one of the most important things for building consumer confidence. Even if you might be acting in a slower, calmer way, I know you don't have any stock now, so I know you've sold it all. If you keep your product out on the market there and you don't focus on OEM just selling motors to bike brands, I think you will end up with a very loyal following in the long term, and obviously you have a quality product. Okay, so let's go back to the bike. So if I look at this bike, the Y-00Z, I have to say it looks very similar to the Moro. There are a lot of characteristics in there which build on the previous model. I would say this is looking like a move further forward. If you look at the seat tube angle, it looks in a little bit slacker. Obviously I've got no geometry numbers on this bike because it is a concept bike. The reach numbers look fairly similar from the photo. Obviously you've got to measure that, because I don't even know what size this bike is in the photos, but there we go. Thought I'd just throw this video up there because I wanted you to think a little bit about Yamaha. I want Yamaha to sort of receive the message. Don't forget that you have a lot of loyal followers and people are very interested in your product, and they want to see you do well, and they want to see a quality offering from Yamaha that's reliable and really you know, keeps the markets moving in a positive forward direction with a lot of competition, innovation, and probably with this motor, I expect there's probably quite a lot of power. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want any more kind of reaction videos, let me know in the comments below, and I will, of course, put those together for you.